Everybody, my name's Tu. I'm just going to talk in this video about why I decided to leave my full-time firefighting job, which was my dream job, the job that I always wanted to get, and the job that I eventually got. Now, this video might resonate with some of you. If you're a firefighter now, this might be interesting to you. But if you're not, you might at least get a glimpse into the inside as to what it is when you get a job like this in the public service, and some of the things that come up that eventually might make you want to leave that job or stay at the job, depending on where you are in life. For me, from the time I was 17 years old, when I first saw a documentary about 9/11, and I was in high school, I kind of told myself that, hey, I'm going to do this job because I saw firefighters coming up and down the building, and it was just a really inspiring documentary that I saw, and it kind of inspired me to want to help people. I found it pretty interesting and pretty amazing that people were willing to essentially go up the stairs while everybody else was leaving the building, and that's just something that really drew to me. I remember being in my parents' bedroom watching this on TV and being really emotional about it too, and just remembering that, hey, this might be the path I want to take. So from there, I was not a good high school student. I mean, I never really attended, I had poor grades and stuff like that. So I didn't know how I would become a firefighter. I just knew that I wanted to eventually probably do that job. And so when I turned 18, I actually joined the Marine Corps, where I was able to become a crash fire rescue, which is actually firefighting with aircrafts on runways. And so I joined the Marine Corps as a reservist. I went to Fire Academy down in Texas, and I was able to learn kind of what it's like to be a firefighter. So I never really did that job too much while I was in the Marine Corps. But I did learn some things like how to be in hot firefighting gear, how to work in that gear. And mind you, at this point, I was physically active when I was younger. I was a skater, so I didn't really play sports. I didn't really lift weights. So it was definitely difficult, I would say, physically. And mentally, I'd never really been pushed that way because academically in school, I never really paid attention anyway. So it was a hard challenge at the time when I was 19 going through it. But I was able to get through it, and eventually I kind of just came home and went back to school because I was a reservist in the Marine Corps. But it had given me that small taste and that small flavor of what it might be like to be a firefighter. And then I went on deployment to Africa and came back, and I was 22 when I came back, and I found out how to apply for a full-time firefighting job, which was a full-time firefighter EMT department. And I joined that place. It took me about 3 years between all the testing to get on that job. So the written test at the time and the physical test at the time, and then passing a psychological exam. I was able to do all that and eventually land a job at 25 years old. So that was the beginning of basically my dream come true, right? I had just landed the job I always wanted, and it was amazing. I was ecstatic. I had worked hard to get there. I had not known whether or not I would actually get there because sometimes firefighting jobs can be difficult to get. But when I did land it, it was mission accomplished. And keep in mind, I'd never been an EMT prior. I'd never been a paramedic. I never really worked in the public sector that way before. So it was all new to me, and there was a huge learning curve. First of all, being 25 and lacking a little bit of the self-confidence required to do those jobs. So it was very much learn on the job, but thankfully the fire department tends to put you around guys and girls who are very confident people with a lot of experience, and they can teach you all that stuff. And so I took onto that job, and I really, really, really loved it. I did it. I got hired in 2013, and I did that job for about 9 years, where I learned a ton of valuable skills. I learned a ton about myself more than anything, and it was a great adventure. But this brings me to the point as to why I eventually left the fire department. I think for the first 5 years of that job, I was just so focused on being a good employee, being a good teammate to the people I worked with, and also to learn my job, to do it well, because it is something I took very seriously to be good at. When you work with a lot of competitive people as well, high confidence people, you're forced to bring yourself up to that level in order to find success for yourself as well. So I was able to do all that, and it was great. One thing I did do when I was firefighting is I had opened a side business, just because a lot of firefighters, if you know any, often have side businesses. And I started one. I was working around automotive stuff, and as I kept doing both, firefighting and working on my business, after about 8 years or so on the fire department, by that time I had seen quite a bit. I worked with a decent sized city, so we had a good amount of runs, anywhere from 5-6 calls a day all the way up to close to 20, depending on which station I was at. And through that journey, I just saw a lot of different things that opened my eyes to the world, opened my eyes to the reality of human condition. As firefighters, we respond to everything. Some people are not aware. If you don't have firefighters in your family, you probably don't know, but we go to everything. We go to shootings, stabbings, drownings, hangings, overdose, on top of fires, right? So burn buildings on fire, or gas leaks, or even entrenchments or things like that. And after about close to 9 years of doing it, my business was starting to pick up, and honestly, I was really burnt out. Both because I allowed myself to go really hard at my business, and because firefighting was taxing as well. So the decision to quit firefighting was actually not an easy one, because it was a job that I wanted for so long, that I thought I would retire out of. And when the thoughts started creeping in my head as to whether or not I wanted to stay a firefighter, right around that 8.5 year mark, and I was 33 at the time, it was kind of a question of, what do I want to do here? I've landed a career that I loved, and now I've got 8.5 years of experience. I've seen not everything, but a good amount of things, a lot of traumatic things. I've got a good experience out of it. I got to see whether or not I could even handle doing that job. And the things that is not talked about publicly too much is just the traumatic events that you see, and the collection of them all when you compile them over a couple of years. And to me, after a while, it became a little bit more difficult to do the job. I could still perform. I would still show up and do my best and never be a burden to my team. But mentally, it was just getting a little bit tiring to deal with the different situations that we come across. There's a lot of politics as well in government jobs like that. And my business was starting to kick up a little bit. And I knew that my timeline was getting short as well. Early 30s, I knew if I wanted to make a change, this might be a good time. So I think leaving fire, the big reason was really just understanding the effects of seeing traumatic things and how they impact you on a day-to-day life, for example, right? So you leave your call, you leave your fire station, but you still live with the trauma that you see. And that's something that you bring home every day. And I'd say the majority of us can deal with it real well, but we also know that some people don't deal with it as well. I thought that I did okay. I never had nightmares or anything like that. But it was still taxing, to the point where if I showed up to an geographical area which we would respond to on my days off, I could feel my heightened sense of attentiveness to my environment. And that's really not normal, I think. And so it kind of showed me that this job here is impacting me much further than just on the job. And in hindsight, it's pretty easy and common sense to know that. But in the moment, it was hard to analyze It took me a lot of time to actually talk to a therapist and just kind of analyze with myself the effects of the job. And so that was probably a big one, was just realizing the toll that it takes on you when you do that every day, when you see all those things. And so I give my credit to firefighters, doctors, police officers, anybody that's seeing traumatic things pretty often. It's pretty heavy on the brain, and you have to find ways to filter it out as best as you can and still maintain being a brother, a dad. I'm not a dad, but a husband at least, right? And so I put a lot of weight on that. Another thing was that although most firefighters that are full-time have a lot of days off, like in my case, I had 20 days full-time that I was off. So I'd work about 10 days intermittently throughout the month, 24-hour shifts. But you'd also have the time off, but you'd be at the station a lot. And, 24 hours in a day times 10 times an entire career can be quite a bit of time you miss from your family. And to me, when I calculated the time that I would be missing away from home with the understanding that life is quite short, it kind of put that extra pressure on me to make a decision too. As much as I like being at the fire station, I enjoyed being home with my wife. I enjoyed having my mental capacity be there for my wife and my family. And sometimes that gets a little bit crowded by the things that you see when you're firefighting. So that was another big thing, was the time that I was taken away from essentially my family. Now, there's other things that come with firefighting as well. Other than the mental side, there's a physical side as well. Obviously, not sleeping all the time is not good for you. And that was something that I highly considered as well. There's pretty much writing on the wall, if you're a firefighter, that people sometimes will pass away quicker due to repeated exposure to infectious disease or lack of sleep or physical harm on the job, right? Maybe not from people, but even from a building collapsing, stuff like that. So there's a lot of factors to take in. And I bring them all up because if you're not a firefighter yet and it's something you're thinking of, it's probably something to consider. And so all those things combined kind of pushed me away from the job. And I realized that I had about 20 years to go. And I had accepted with myself that I'm not willing to do that for another 20 years. And so it was a really hard decision to make, but one that I had to make and that I chose to make so that I could come run my business full time. And running a business full time is stressful too, but it's a little bit different. I get some of my time back, and I get a little bit more mental clarity and social energy, which I think is not talked about a lot either. When you deal with people in traumatic situations, you do spend a lot of your social energy with individuals like that, and that wears you out as well. So it's been 2 years since I've left, and running a business is not easy. It's a lot of work, but I take a lot of pride in the things that I learned while I was firefighting, which was how to deal with different types of individual, how to take charge in dire situations, how to keep your head straight when things are not going your way. And those are all beautiful things that I learned on the fire department that I took with me. And yeah, so that's just some of the reasons why I left the fire department. And I will always look back at that journey as probably one of my favorite journeys in life. And, I still have a lot to go, but I just learned so much. I met some great people, and I just have tremendous respect for people that do that job, because now that I went through it for 8.5 years, I understand the toll that it takes. And so if you're thinking about doing a job like that, these are some things that you may just want to consider. And they're just some of the things that I wanted to share with you guys, because I figured somebody may learn from it, and at least analyze, and maybe your perspective will be completely different if you do get on a job like that, and maybe for you it'll be a breeze. So that's kind of the reasons why I left the fire department, and I just wanted to share them and just put them on YouTube. And if you get questions, leave them below. I'd be happy to answer any of those. And I hope you got something out of this story and you learned something. And if you're going to one of those jobs, Godspeed and take care of yourself. So that's all I got for this one. Thanks for sitting in.